Good morning, guys. I apologize. I'm a bit under the weather, so if I sound like SpongeBob but all clogged up, that's why. Today, I was going to review the weird classic Westworld as my overdue 200 subscriber special. But as I'm getting closer to 300, I decided to dispose reviewing that for now and make this list. Yep, this is my 10 favorite movies of all time. I'll still review these later on for special occasions. Also, in my 100th episode, I said that Hellboy 2: The Golden Army would be number 10, but it has since been knocked off my list, sadly. As far as rules for this list, there are no rules. Anything goes this time because they're my favorites. I will say this though, the first 5 are somewhat interchangeable. It's from number 5 onwards where I get a more solid and more concrete idea on the list. That and these aren't what I think are the best movies of all time, just my favorites. And I bet you cannot guess what my number 1 pick is, since no one talks about it at all. Well, let's get to it. These are my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Number 10. Westworld. What do you get when you mix the Terminator with Walt Disney World? You get Westworld, a movie regarding an adult theme park separated into 3 sections: Roman World, Medieval World, and of course, Westworld. The film itself had Yul Brynner from the 10 Commandments as one of the coolest gunslingers ever put to film, as well as being the first movie directed by acclaimed sci-fi novelist Michael Crichton. It was also the first film to use digital image processing, in which the scenery was pixelated when the shot went to the gunslinger's point of view. This is easily one of the most creative movies I've ever seen, and if you haven't seen it, grab your battery-powered 6-shooter, stroll on down to the Wild West, and see for yourself. Number 9. 1408. One thing you'll likely notice about my list is that there is a number of movies based on books here. But if a movie is good, a movie is good. And 1408 is really good. They took a simple premise, a guy checks into an evil hotel room, and they did so very much with it. They had a lot of legit scares in this story, and the third act, I'm not spoiling it, watch it for yourself, is really freaking smart. I'm in college, learning about screenwriting, and one of the assignments I had was to write a story about a hotel room. While I did something completely different, 1408 was the first thing that came to mind. Fun fact, when the movie reaches the point when the digital clock begins to count down, starting at 60 minutes, the movie literally has 60 minutes left. That is cool. Great acting, great plot, and great scares. 1408 is one creepy movie that will definitely stick with you. Just don't watch it if you're in a hotel room. Number 8. Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This is a movie where I have to ask, what can I say about it that other people haven't said? Out of almost all the movies on this list, I will admit that this one definitely has the most flaws, especially when it comes to the gargoyles. But literally everything else is likable, if not lovable. The soundtrack is easily one of my favorites of all time. Hellfire in particular is said to be one of the best villain songs of all time from one of Disney's best villains to boot. But the one thing I think I like about the movie is how everything is portrayed. Yes, it's dark, but it feels enormous. Just the first 6 minutes with the number The Bells of Notre Dame makes you feel like you're in for a real ride. The sweeping visuals of Paris, especially the beautiful view of Notre Dame, everything feels really big and almost perfectly imposing. The voice acting is spectacular, especially when it comes to Tony Jay as Judge Claude Frollo and Tom Hulce as Quasimodo. What more is there to say? If you haven't seen this movie, see it for yourself. I doubt you'll be disappointed. Number 7. Mr. Sardonicus. This is a B movie. I will admit wholeheartedly to that fact. Made by who was called the King of Gimmicks, William Castle, Mr. Sardonicus was about a doctor in Victorian-era London who takes a trip to visit his long-beloved after she sends him a letter saying how she was betrothed to the despicable Baron Sardonicus, a man with a permanent case of Joker smile. This is one of those cases where it's so strange, so undeniably weird, that you just can't help but to be entranced by its strangeness. I mean, that grin, that was made with actual practical appliances that spread the actor's mouth open and was actually so painful he couldn't wear it for over an hour at a time. That is dedication. What more can I say? This is a really, really creepy movie. Give in to the strangeness and take a look. Number 6. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. First off, I would like to say that I helped to get this movie into the National Film Registry, which is essentially the Hall of Fame for all of American cinema, 2 years ago, and it really, really deserved it. Willy Wonka is nothing short of an absolute classic. With only 3 movies based on classic literature appearing on my list, I can honestly say that this is definitely the most fun of them all. Lovable characters, memorable songs, remarkable and sometimes terrifying scenes. The best way I can describe this movie is that it's a sweet and savory treat you'll never forget. Number 5. V for Vendetta. Remember the 5th of November. I knew the movie was going to be a blast when it opened with that memorable line, though I know the movie didn't create the line itself. Based off of the comic book of the same name, I can honestly say this is my favorite comic book movie of all time, with some of the best action I have ever seen. Especially when it comes to the knife fight at the end. Damn, that scene was amazing! With great acting, an enthralling story, and gripping action, you really should check out this piece of anarchy. Number 4. The Great Mouse Detective. While I'd say this was based off of Sherlock Holmes, it is, but it's more based off of the Basil of Baker Street book series. Even for a movie about mice, this is a really dark Disney movie. Darker than Hunchback of Notre Dame in many aspects. Like what most people say about this movie, while it is a mystery, it's not about who committed the crime. Okay, well it is, but not when you're trying to figure out who the suspect is. It's about the hero and the villain. And speaking of, I can't continue any longer without singing Vincent Price's praises. He owns this role. See my villain song list for more, but that was ultimately the deciding factor in what made this my favorite Disney movie of all time. Well, until... Number 3. Inside Out. Yes, this movie just came out last year, but I honestly cannot help myself. Inside Out is about as close to being a pure masterpiece as it can be, as it resonates with everyone who watches it. It's relatable, at least to me, because as I grew up, I had moved quite a lot, and it left me with confusing emotions as I went from one state or one country to another. Yes, this movie is essentially a road trip movie, one kind of movie I've grown extremely tired of, but this movie was done with perfection. Inside Out, not only my favorite movie of the last year, but likely my favorite movie of the decade. Number 2. The Bride of Frankenstein. From my most recent entry on the list to the oldest entry, The Bride of Frankenstein was based merely on a subplot from the original Frankenstein novel, and yet it became what is considered to be one of the best horror movies of all time, as well as one of the best sequels of all time. It also gave us one of the most iconic monster images, the Bride, that has become quite the pop cultural icon, along the likes of the rest of the Universal monsters. Now I keep getting told that they're remaking this movie. And while I am cautious, it won't matter. We'll still have the classic, and we always will. Number 1. Theater of Blood. Like I said, not a lot of people talk about this movie. For the uninitiated, allow me to fill you in. Vincent Price plays a theatrical actor who enjoys overacting to the point that the critics really hate him for it. So when the time comes for him to get a special award given by the critics, they turn him down, and he takes revenge by killing them off in Shakespearean fashion. Now, as a movie critic, I should absolutely hate this movie, right? No, not even close. You see, I've always said that if you can tell an actor enjoys what he's doing, it makes the movie better. This is the perfect example of that. You see, Vincent was a theatrically trained actor who always tried for Shakespearean roles, but kept getting typecast into horror films. Thus, this movie was quite literally made for him. It shows, and he owns it. He has sort of a Looney Tunes vibe throughout the whole thing, even when he's cramming food into his victim's mouth or cutting the heart out of another. If you're a Vincent Price fan, or a fan of horror in general, you need to watch this movie. You will not regret it. And those are my favorite movies of all time. What are yours? Leave them in the comments. I'm actually pretty curious to hear what movies you guys like the most. Other than that, leave a like and hit that subscribe button for more stuffs. Next time I'm doing something a little smaller in scale. I'm going to be talking about